Today, instead of watching a lesson video, I'm going to have you watch a lab. This lab has to do with Boyle's Law, and remember back to last week we talked about both Boyle's Law and Charles' Law. They have to do with the ways that gases behave when they're exposed to variables like temperature and pressure and volume. In today's lesson, or in today's lab, we're going to be experimenting with Boyle's Law, which remember states that the volume of a gas is inversely proportional to the pressure that the gas exerts on the container. That's just a fancy way of saying that if a gas is compressed or squeezed into a tiny amount of space, if it has a tiny amount of volume, then the amount of pressure that it's going to push on the container with is going to go up. Inversely proportional means that we're dealing with two opposite things. If the pressure inside the container goes up, it means the volume has gone down, and vice versa. If the volume goes down, it means the pressure that the gas molecules are pushing out with has gone up. We're going to see that actually works out like the law says that it will. Now remember that a scientific law is a observation that we expect to occur every single time something happens. The law of gravity states that every time something is dropped, it's going to fall toward the object with the most mass. So every single time, right, that would be gravity. Let's see if Boyle's Law is as predictable. In order to do this experiment today, I've taken a medical syringe and I've covered the end where the needle would go with a piece of putty. And this is going to keep the gas molecules that are inside the syringe currently from being able to get out. You'll notice that the stopper on the syringe has been pulled out all the way, and there are two different labels on the sides of the syringe. The first is ounces, which we're not going to measure, and that would be for liquids. The other is cc, and cc stands for cubic centimeters. Remember that that's how we measure the volume of a solid, or in this case also of a gas. So right now, the syringe contains 60 cubic centimeters of air molecules of gas. We're going to see what happens as we add some pressure to the top of this syringe. Maybe the volume will go down, maybe the volume won't. We'll see. Now, in order to complete this lab at home, the next thing you're going to need to do is make a data table. I'm going to show you what needs to be on your data table, and then I'm going to ask you to pause the video so that you have a chance to create it. So at the top of your data table, after you've put your label, I want you to make two columns, one for adding books and one for removing books. Inside of each column, you need two subheadings. The first is going to be the number of books that you're adding or removing, and the other is going to have to be the volume measurement, again in cubic centimeters, for however many books you have placed on top of your syringe. So you'll have two columns, adding books and removing books. Within each column, you're going to create a separate subcolumn for the number of books that you've added or removed and the volume of the gas while there are that many books on your syringe. Notice in adding books, we're going to go ahead and pre-fill in the number of books column starting with 0 and going all the way up to 4. And in the removing books column, we're going to pre-fill the number of books starting with 4 and working backwards towards 0. Go ahead and pause your video, create your data table. Once you're done, join us again and we will get started. All right, so at this point, I'm assuming that your data table has been created. You're gonna wanna have it handy, you're gonna wanna have it sitting next to you so that you can fill out the information as we go. We're gonna start by adding books. Now I have 4 books here. These are the teacher's editions of our science books, so they're a little bit heavier, they're a little bit more mass than your books do. And I'm going to add them one at a time to our syringe. Now, if we zoom in again, you'll notice that the syringe is set to 60 cc, 60 cubic centimeters. That's where we are going to begin today with 0 books sitting on top of our syringe before we add. So please make sure to make a note on your data table that with 0 books in the adding books column, our volume is 60 cubic centimeters. Don't forget your label. Cubic centimeters is important there too. Now without further ado, I'm going to add 1 book to the top of our syringe here. I'm going to try to just keep it steady but not apply any additional pressure. And let's watch to see what happens. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so. I'm not going to read all of the labels just because it's a little too much for me to get to the other side, and because I want you to be able to make some observations as well. If you need to pause the video again, go ahead and do so, but I'm going to add a second book to the top of our syringe. Again, not applying any pressure myself, just keeping the books steady. Add that number with your label to the data table. Here comes book number 3. Pause the video if you need more time. Here I'm adding book number 4. All right, at this point you should have all of the volume column of adding books put together. Now we have 4 books on right now. So if you go to your removing books column, please take a moment to write the volume for 4 books at the top of the removing books column. Don't forget your label. I'm going to remove 1 book, so now we're down to 3 books on our syringe. Don't forget your labels. Then I remove the 3rd book, so now we have 2 books sitting on top of our syringe. I'm going to remove the 2nd book, so now we have just 1 book sitting on top of the syringe. And last but not least, I'm going to take that last book off, and here we have no books sitting on top of our syringe. Again, don't forget your labels on the data table. You'll notice that there's a form right beneath this video that has some additional questions I'd like you to fill out. Please take a picture of your data table and attach that to the form as well. I look forward to seeing your answers.